Hi! Hi everyone! Zodiac Pen Co. Been waiting all morning for this. I've been waiting since Wednesday for this. Hi everyone! Let me know if you can hear me, if the volume's all good, if there's anything glitchy. And welcome in. Get comfortable. Get your get your coffees, get your drinks, depending on what time zone you're in. Are you staying warm? Are you staying cool? Yay, hi, welcome in. I'm so glad you're here too to catch a stream. Super excited to finally catch a stream. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Mick Enthusiast. First one in the morning to say good morning. Hi. Hi. Welcome in. I've got my coffee because it's 9 a.m. in British Columbia, Canada. So I've got my coffee, second coffee actually, sorry. I'm ready to go. So yeah, grab your favorite drink or water and just come in, join. We're just gonna have a chill sort of stream playing with fountain pen inks and fountain pens. Oh, thank you so much for the follow, Moonella. Hi, welcome in. Hi. Okay, so I'm Corolla. I'm a stationery enthusiast. I am a planner, journaler. I love fountain pens. I love painting and drawing with fountain pen inks. And I love sharing my process of how I'm creative, how I do art. It's my way of relaxing and spending some mindful time. And if you want to join me, then join my streams. I'm also on socials. You can find all that out on my profile. And I'm happy you're here because today, so what I normally do is every month I swatch all of my currently inked fountain pens, and I usually share it as a YouTube video. So it's edited, it looks great. I always cut out, the in-betweens where I'm like trying to get the fountain pen to write and just all that fun stuff. And this month, because we're almost at the end of February, next week, I thought I'm enjoying the live streams, so I thought I would just swatch all my fountain pens live. Feel free to have me on in the background or chat, ask questions. If you have any questions about the fountain pens that I have, I'm happy to talk about them, as all pen people are. February is almost over. Can you believe it? Like, literally, I was looking forward to the California Pen Show mid-February and counting down towards it, and then all of a sudden it's over and February is over. So, hi Needle Girl, hi, welcome in. Oh, Gama, you made it. Yay, the party can start. No, I'm just kidding. Everyone here is the party. Yay, welcome in. Thanks so much for joining. I know it's a Friday, so we're gonna just chill, right? I don't know if you've had a long week, but I've had a very busy week, and I'm just looking forward to playing with fountain pens. And if you saw my Instagram story, I did ink up the new fountain pens that I got at the pen show. So on Wednesday, I live streamed my haul, and I showed off the pens that I bought. So I inked them up. They're ready to go. And so today we're going to swatch them. January was 8 months. January was like 500 days. I don't even know. And then February is like 5 days. I was looking at my planner for next week and got real spooked when I saw March. I know. Or like if you do bullet journaling or just like logging, like monthly logs, I have to transfer everything over. It's a whole thing. But honestly, I was like, March is coming. Yeah. I know. So anyways, I'll do a little chat about how I sort of store my fountain pens. So what you see here is a little tray, a pen tray. This usually sits on my desk and has the fountain pens that I use on the regular, so like daily writers kind of. And then I also carry my fountain pens in this rickshaw Sinclair, and there's enough space in there that you could also put like a 2-pen sleeve, and then you can have these single sleeves. So fountain pens, you can carry a lot with you on the go. But for the purpose of today's swatching, I put them into this Galen leather zip case, which is like, it's worn, it's patinaed, it's aged very well, because I've had this for a few years, and it carries 10 fountain pens. So that's very handy. And then I usually have like, just like my currently inked swatch book, which I'll show you in a second. But yeah, I don't know how you carry your fountain pens, but I find that sometimes having it like this is like, you know, it's an A5 size, so it's a little bit bulky, but you know, it's sort of depending on your preference. But I do like having it like this for when I kind of want to inventory all of my pens and swatch them, so that's why they're kind of like this. But we'll do them in order of ink color, because that's how I like doing my swatches. So this is Musubi. It's a Musubi notebook. I think it's Rasa paper. So I got this at the SF Pen Show last year from Musubi, like the table. And the paper I like because it's like Cosmo Air Light, if you're familiar with that. It's a little bit like shiny texture, if you know what I mean, like writing on it. I like it because it makes the ink properties really shine. So like this was, I just swatched like I wrote with all my fountain pens that I had inked, and you can sort of see like it catches the light really well, or maybe you can't see, but yeah, it looks really great, and it sort of reflects back the colors really nicely and the properties of the ink. So if you have like shimmer, sheen, that kind of thing. So I kind of like having just an inventory of my currently inked fountain pens on a monthly basis. And then I also, if you see this, I also do a review on a monthly basis in terms of like what I have. So 139 ink bottles, I know. 31 ink samples. I'm very proud of that because I've had like 100 ink samples for a while, and I slowly dwindled that down just by painting with inks, but also just inking up fountain pens, and 65 fountain pens. I feel like I could definitely add to my fountain pen collection. Do you track the dates that you ink and clean a pen? I do, Mick Enthusiast, I do. And if I have my, I have my Sterling ink and two. Last year I just used like a regular Hobonichi A6 notebook to do this, but this year I've decided to do it on a monthly basis. And usually what I do is when I ink a pen, I will usually write it down in like the weekly view or the weekly the weekly layout, and then I'll just write down like what the pen was and what the ink was. And then usually if I get something new like a pen or an ink, I also document that in the monthly. So cleaning a pen, usually I don't, but if I clean a pen and then I refill it, then I'll probably put it into my book just to track like how much time has passed between refills. I know it's super nerdy for people who don't do that, but for people who do it, I get it. You know, it's just one of those things. Like, we love data. We love tracking how often we use a pen. And so that kind of comes in handy. Let's see. Hi, Olive Octopus Inc. Hi, welcome in. Hi, everyone. I found it turned my toasty joggers more pink. Are you talking about Rasa? Yeah. The thing is too, like, paper, right, makes a difference sometimes with inks and like swatching and stuff. So I do like keeping an inventory in my notebook, but as I'll show you for currently inked spreads that I share on YouTube or Instagram, I use the Galen leather notebooks, and they are TRP, so Tomori River paper. And I just find, you know, because I use TRP planners and journals and stuff, that this is probably the best reflection of what the ink would look like in my journals. So this is the one I did. This is the spread I did for Currently Inked, or more, I would probably call it Notably Inked, because what I'll sort of talk about is I keep an inventory of all the pens that are inked, but then for my Currently Inked spreads, I kind of like, because I like to draw flowers and sort of take up room, I tend to just do like the fountain pens that stood out to me that month, or that aren't like all black, right? Like, how many black inks do I want to swatch? Not all. So this is typically what I do. I pick my top 8 to 10 fountain pens, and then I do Currently or Notably Inked swatch. I think Notably Inked is more accurate for what I do, but I call it Currently Inked because, you know, that's what we know. So that's usually what I do. And the reason why I do this is not only because it looks aesthetically pleasing, so obviously social content, but also because it helps, like when I do my floral swatches, and I'll show you in real time, obviously, but it helps me sort of see how pens sort of react when you do loops and when you do shading. And so whether they're good for not only writing, but also for drawing and sketching with. So I find that helpful for me. And I hope it's helpful for other people too when they see it. Yeah, I get it, Gamma Gamma. Paper does make a difference sometimes. Zodiac pens. So I know a little about pens, here to learn more about stationery. Okay, so I'll talk about pens and stationery. Zodiac Pens does know a lot about pens. A lot of people here do. Notably Inked. Yeah, you love that. Yeah, I think because Currently Inked is sort of that statement or that phrase that people are like in the community understand, right? Like, you swatch your Currently Inked pens, great. But I think for me, and a lot of people probably, we tend to ink up more than just, you know, the fountain pens that we're enjoying. So for example, these are my, what you might call loaner pens, or pens that I just have sort of lying around that if I need to write something quickly and I just want to write it with a fountain pen, or if, you know, someone comes along and they're like, oh, can I try one of your fountain pens? This is what I give them. And it's basically the Muji. In Canada here, you can get the Muji. It's like a Preppy. So Platinum Preppy in a Muji store. It's their version, but basically the same thing. And this one, I have a cute little emoji because this is blue ink cartridge and this is black ink cartridge. And this one's like this black and white is just classic, right? And then this is white with a blue ink. So. Okay, I'm gonna quickly turn off the light because I think it's skewing the colors a little bit. Okay, that might be a little bit better. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, those are my loaner fountain pens. But they're great. Like Platinum Preppy or even like the Muji Preppy, they're great pens, so, and you can always throw them into a bag. You ordered a Rhodia Top Spiral A5. Oh, yes. Oh, and Zodiac, you're the one who talked about having like a logbook at pen shows at your table. That's a great idea. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, check in at the next show. Yeah, that's a great idea, right? Like, or like having a guest book, or when you go to an event or you're, you know, hosting something. It's a great way of getting people to check in or like write you a message or something, right? And then later you know who's there. Oh, you like the sticker? Thank you. Thank you for appreciating that, because I feel like obviously, you know, it's one way of like, if you find a pen that you like and you like, I like the simple classic white and that's what Muji has. You can always throw different cartridges in it and then just have a little fun with the sticker. Okay. Yeah, so feel free to ask questions or, you know, chat or just watch or hang out. What I'm going to do first, I'm just going to inventory, like I'm going to go through all of my fountain pens and write them all down in this book. So you can sort of see, you know, we'll talk about the pen, the nib, and the ink that I have inside. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free. And then after that, I have my 10 notably inked fountain pens, the ones that I'm excited about this month or that are inked differently than last month. And so I'll show you how I do the floral spread, or this kind of sort of swatch. And yeah, that's kind of the plan for today. So we'll just hang out and have some fun with fountain pens. Yay. Okay, so let's see. First, we're gonna get the black ink out of the way, and then we'll go into like rainbow colors, the fun colors. Ooh, okay, yes. So first, let me put this somewhere safe. And so I don't know if you keep a currently inked or like an inventory spread on a monthly basis, or, you know, how often you sort of ink your pens. But what I use as well, that I find a way to use stationary zodiac pens, is these handy stamps. So this specific one I got from Everyday Explorers at the SF Pen Show last year. But you can find like similar types of stamps or stickers, right, that you can use up in your currently inked spread. And so what I do is I use these acrylic stamps, and there's one that says currently inked, right? So I'll show you how you can use one of these stamps just to add a little bit of, like, it's a header basically for your spread, but also it gives a little interest. So this stamp hat, the Chachihara, I got at the California Pen Show from the Everyday Explorers table actually, and it's this olive green, which is really, really pretty. So what I typically do is I stamp, so I put the acrylic stamp on this acrylic block, which you can easily find at any craft store or the dollar store even. And then I dab the stamp onto, like the ink, onto the stamp itself. So some people will do it the other way, where they, you know, gently sort of put the stamp onto the pad. But I find that you can, it's sort of inconsistent that way, because then you can get blobs of ink around the outline of it. And so that will sort of give you a little bit of an inconsistent stamp when you put it on the paper. So the other way is kind of how I would recommend it. So you just kind of gently dab it on like that. And then you can also sort of see if you have the color on there. So that should be okay. And then just gently press down. Ooh. It's also very satisfying when you stamp on a paper. Yeah, you love these stamp designs. I do too. It's really fun, right? Like, it's just, or like you can get them as stickers too. It's like, they're really fun to just like use your stash basically. Okay, so those are stamps. And then, so I like these other ones too. Like, I use State of the Collection when I do a review of like all of my pens and things like that. New ink. Some of these are really, really cool and useful. Pen test page, right? That's handy to have. Okay. I could use a laser to make my own stamps. I think you can, right? Yeah. I would think so. Maybe. I don't know. Okay, so the first pen is this baby saguaro from Skogsy Pens. And it's in an ultim material. And it's very cute, very sleek. And the nib that I have inside is a double broad sag nib from Franklin-Christoph. Can you see it? Yeah, there we go. And it's ground by Audrey in-house, like for Franklin-Christoph. But I love it because it's this raven black nib, right? So it makes the pen look even sleeker and very, very cool. So I'm just gonna write with it. And the ink that I have inside is Platinum Chokuro. So Platinum Chokuro, if you're not familiar with it, is touted as the blackest of all black inks from Platinum. So Platinum also has carbon black, which is like a really, it's a waterproof or pigment, very dark black. And so they had to like one up themselves by coming up with an even blacker ink. So if you are into like just a really rich black fountain pen ink, this is my recommendation for sure, because it is very, very dark. Like it's very black. And what I actually do is I have an ink cartridge in here, and I just syringe fill like with a blunt syringe with chokuro, because apparently it is a little tough to clean out if you keep it in your pen for a while. So for me, it's like one of those like I will use this forever probably. So I just keep inking this pen up, and that's what this is dedicated to. So I have some pens in my collection that, or like my daily sort of use pens that I dedicate to certain inks, just because it's like, I don't want to spend time cleaning this out and then re-inking with something else and then, you know, deciding I do use black inks a lot. So, and then having to decide where to put this in another pen. So for me, it's just easier to have some fountain pens that, depending on what nib they are, or have, they're dedicated to certain inks. So for me, that works. And then I have pens that I kind of rotate through, depending on what nib, again, what nib they have, and then what I kind of feel like using that month. So yeah, so what now? Yeah, so what now? Do I do calligraphy? I do brush lettering. I am not like a professional calligrapher or anything like that. But I love hand lettering, and I've been hand lettering for years, almost 10 years now. So for me, hand lettering is like, and brush lettering is, yeah, it's fun. I do headers and stuff like that. Yeah. Moonella, you should definitely think about adding chokuro to your ink wish list. And so if your favorite retailer has sales, because chokuro tends to be on the more expensive side, if they have a sale or a deal on inks, that's when you pick it up. You love the feather pens, old school. Yeah. Very cool. I wouldn't think that ink is a good, no. Zodiac, I agree with you. I don't think it's a good idea for vac fillers. And again, like, you know, I use it in this baby pen, pocket pen, because I can take the nib out, right? Like this pen allows you to interchange the nib. It's a number 6, you know, and so I can take out the nib, I can, you know, and I have an ink cartridge in here, so I don't have to use a converter. And it's also a baby, so it wouldn't take a regular converter anyways. But I just use like a short ink cartridge that I just fill up whenever it's done. So the cleaning system to me is very important too with these types of inks. Like if you use pigment inks, shimmer inks, or high sheening inks, I would definitely think about what pen you put it in. Whether like you use a cheap pen, so it's not a big deal, or if you use a pen that is easy to clean out, if you do need to clean it out, or if it clogs or something like that. Yeah. 6 was so big. I know. The number 6 in the baby pen is like, whoa. Anyways, okay, so the second pen that I have, that we're going to swatch is, we'll go in this order, is the Pilot Custom 823, which I've only had this. Whoa, I've only had this for a few months, but it's been on my wish list for a long time, the 823, and I love this nib size. So that's the Pilot Custom 823. The nib that I have in it is a signature nib. So Pilot offers, various nib sizes in stock. And so I got it with a signature nib because I've been very curious about it. And Pilot nibs to me are the best nibs. So I really wanted to try the signature. It's meant to be like 4 signatures, basically, is like where it came from. But it's like a rounded stub almost, and it's very smooth, or it should be very smooth to write with. And I like stubby nibs more so now than I did before. When I first started with fountain pens, I did gear towards extra fines and fines because I like, my very thin fine liners. And so that's how I started. But as I progressed in my collection, I realized that I actually like seeing ink properties. So I love, seeing like pools of ink or, sheen. Or if you use shimmers, you obviously want to see that shimmer come through. And for me, the best kind of nibs are the broader nibs for that. So looks a lot like Platinum 3776. Yeah, Mark. Carbon black stained my ink window. Oh no. On your Homo sapiens? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Are you against carbon black now? Or are you like, I'm gonna use it in a different pen? You just dip the pen in the ink and then just wipe it when you're done. Oh, yes. Specific pens for certain inks. Yeah, that's true. You could do that as well. Yeah. So the ink I have in this one is Dominant Industry. This is an exclusive collaboration with Wonder Pens, which is a stationery shop, in Toronto, Canada. If you haven't been to Wonder Pens and you're making it out to Toronto, or if you're in the area, go to Wonder Pens. They have great selection of pens and inks, but they also have a series of collaborations that they did with Dominant Industry. I think there's 4 inks in the line, but this one is called Tuna Gray, and it's a really, really nice gray, as you'll see. And so this pen is specific, this is again one of those pens that I just kind of dedicate to an ink. And because I like grays, I use grays a lot with blacks. So I use black inks, gray inks, brown inks. But this is kind of my gray ink go-to and my pen that I go to. So hopefully this will write. Let me see. Yeah. So this is the Pilot. Let's do Look at that line. Wow. You could have some real fun with this. And it's very smooth to write with, which I love. And it's with dominant and Wonder Pens called Tuna Gray. And Tuna is one of their shop cats. They have 2 shop cats, Chicken and Tuna. And Chicken is a ginger cat, like an orangey sort of cat, and Tuna is a gray cat. So it makes sense to have a Tuna Gray. They do have a fun bottle, yeah. You hate fat lines. Oh, it's all about the UEF. Okay, I will get to that. Yeah, I will get to that. Permanent ink, the application was wrong. Okay. Yeah, okay, so, I'm glad that you realized that, Zodiac Pens, and like I've done it before where an ink just will not perform well with a certain pen, and then you get into ink properties like wet ink versus dry ink. And then if you have, like for example, if you have an ink that tends to write dry and you're using it in an ultra extra fine or an extra fine, then you're gonna find that they don't perform so well together, right? So finding that sweet spot between a pen and the ink, not only, based on like shimmers and whether it's like a permanent ink or something, but also just the ink itself has specific properties to it, right? And sometimes it will perform well with a pen and sometimes it won't. And it's just kind of playing with that and finding just kind of finding what works. And sometimes when you find something that works really well together, don't let it go. That's what I do. I just kind of stick with it because, if it works, it works. Yeah, this one is like an EDC for me, right? Like this is at my desk all the time. I always have it inked. This is a Pilot Vanishing Point, and I have an ink cartridge in it, and it is the Pilot Iroshizuku Takesumi. And for me, this is like a great combination. A Pilot ink and a Pilot pen, right? Like, why play with that? Why play around with that a little bit? So, yeah. And the nib that I have in here is broad. So, I'll just show you how that writes. So it's a great broad. And I don't know if you have VPs or if you like VPs, but these are great because, you get the clicky, right? And it's very convenient. And again, I love Pilot nibs. So this is one of those pens that, I think I will always just have inked up because it's useful and it's great for like on the go kind of ease. Okay, Mark, this is for you. The Platinum Century 3776 with a UEF nib. There we go. Needlepoint. Let's talk needlepoint. Right? Like, so this is my only needlepoint actually, or UEF. Ultra extra fine, because I feel like I only kind of, for me personally, I only kind of need one, and this replaces like fine liners sometimes. This replaces, when I need those detailed lines, this is what I go to, and I have it inked with platinum carbon black. Zodiac pens. I just throw this cartridge in here and that's all it has. And it's fine. Like I haven't had any issues with it, but also I don't, I'm not finicky with using a different ink in this. Like I'm good just dedicating this to my carbon black. You can have it, carbon black. You can have my pen. A bold choice, yeah. Very. I haven't tried a Pilot broad nib yet. Plan with Shelly. You're curious. Okay, yeah. You've also changed from liking extra fine to more broad nibs. Yeah, so yeah, and the smoother, like I find too, broader nibs tend to be a little bit smoother for me. You have a little bit more, just a little bit more like a wider line basically, right? So yeah, I agree. They're great. And it's worth trying out different size pens too. Like if you're at a pen show or you're able to test pens, if you're at a meetup and people bring their pens and you're able to try them, it's worth trying out other pens just to see what would feel comfortable and whether you're, willing to go up to a different size too. And because I don't know, Mark, if you found this or anyone else who uses needlepoint or UEF nibs, I don't know if you've noticed a difference between like a steel or a gold nib, but for me personally, I think I'm happy with this because it is a gold nib, and for me, it seems like it does feel a little bit softer. So, you can kind of compare a needlepoint to like writing with a needle, like it could be that scratchy, but to me I just don't find it as scratchy as maybe a steel nib would be, or I've used it so much that the softness of the gold, okay, so I think it does, and I've used it quite a bit, so maybe it's sort of, it's a little bit more giving to me. Okay. FC. Here we go. Or get a custom grind that is UAF forward and something else in the reverse. Oh, of course. Fountain pen use. Yeah, that's a great idea. I know. I've just gotten into getting reverse grinds, and it's like a whole new world has opened up in terms of what you could do with a nib. Because yes, if you do use needlepoint for specific situations or specific instances, then you could have that on your nib, but also have, what you use on the daily. So, you could kind of interchange those uses. That's a great idea. Yeah. Plan with Shelly, you got a broad sig from Franklin-Christoph at the Philly Pen Show. Yeah, I love those sigs. They're great. Stub italics. Yeah. Mark, I'm seeing your comment about the Navalure. The fine nib, writing upside down with the nib. Same with my Waterman. It's so nice upside down. Interesting. That's really cool. Interesting. Funny how so many people start with the EF nibs. I know. That's so interesting. That's how you started too. Burgaboo. Yeah. Okay. Replacing your 0.28. I think my go-to was the Muji 0.38, and I still love it, but yeah, I kind of was like, well, you know, I'm writing in my journals with this, why not write with a fountain pen? So that's why you kind of go with like the EF or even needlepoint. Now all you want is broader nibs. Listen, when we go through my currently inked, you'll see a few broad nibs. So this one is a Franklin-Christoph Pocket 20. And it's like a candy red color or something, or candy apple red. I got it at the SF Pen Show last year, and it's a snap cap, so super easy to just uncap, and then it has this really fun grip, right? And the nib I have in it is, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but it's engraved. Oh, there we go, maybe. It's engraved with, it was engraved for the SF Pen Show a couple of years ago. And I got it from Kirk at Pen Realm. So Kirk does engraved nibs for pen shows. I don't know if he does it for all or the ones that he goes to, but I got one that, like, for my first pen show at the SF, in San Francisco at the SF Pen Show, I got this engraved nib from him. And I got it ground by CY from Tokyo Station Pens. And CY is a great nib specialist. And he's kind of known for, or if you know the Esterbrook Techo nib, that is ground by CY. So the Techo nib that you can get specially on an Estie is from CY, and it's basically ground from a broad nib into his variation of a naginata. So depending on your writing angle, you'll get different line variations. And I think that's probably, the naginata, or a variation of that, is probably my favorite grind of all time, because the way I use my pen sometimes is like when I'm journaling, or like when I'm writing normally, my print is usually at, you know, a sort of like, not really high angle, but at a, you know, a high angle. And when I am journaling, or I'm writing like stream of consciousness type of writing, where I'm just like blah, just getting words out onto paper, I tend to do like a sort of cursive, relaxed kind of writing. And for that, I use a lower writing angle. So I don't know if you do that as well for different instances of writing. You sort of have different writing styles or angles of writing, but I find the Techo nib or the naginata, or, you know, different variations of that allows me to get those different angles, and they're fun that way, right? So I'll show you. This one is, if you get it ground from CY at a pen show or an event, this one is called the Mini Sankakusen, and it is AKA the Techo nib. So this is basically what you would get from Esterbrook if you got the Techo nib. And the ink that I have in it is a really fun one too. For February, it makes sense. It's a Sailor Shikiori sakura-mori. And it's this really nice, like, sakura pink color, which also makes sense for the pen, so. 5. Okay, so when I'm writing, you'll notice my angle's a little bit higher. And then when I'm journaling, or I'm sort of just writing, I use this lower, nope, didn't spell that right at all. Oh, okay, yeah, I got it close. So yeah, when you're writing at a higher angle, you sort of get that like medium line, I would say. And then when you're writing at a lower angle, you get that those broad strokes. And this is actually the mini Sankakusen, which you can get ground on a broad nib. That's a really fun pink. So now we're into like the fun inks and the fun colors. So what I'm going to show you is how I actually create this currently inked or notably inked spread. So now that I've kind of talked about the fountain pen and the ink and the nib a little bit, let's create our first little fun floral spread, our swatch. So let's put that there, and okay, here we go. I think I need a clip, so let me see. There we go. I have a question about nib grinds. Okay, I'm gonna go back in the comments and just see what's going on. I have a question about nib grinds. Is it possible to have an F on the front and a B on the reverse? Fountain pen used, do you mean fine or EF? Definitely, yeah. Yeah. Start with a larger tipping size, yes. Yeah, fountain pen use. Thanks for explaining. That's exactly right. So when I buy, like for example, when I bought this engraved nib from Kirk, I bought it because I obviously wanted to commemorate my first pen show, right? And it has, I want to say trolley car, but it's me not knowing exactly what those are in San Francisco, but you know, the streetcar style. And so I just wanted to get the nib to commemorate that. I wasn't sure what I wanted to get ground. So my recommendation in those types of cases is to either get broad or double broad, because especially if you think that you're more on like the broader side of writer, right? And I knew I wanted to get a grind that was a little bit broader. So you can go with broad and double broad because a nib specialist can always take away tipping and make a smaller size. But if you have like an extra fine or fine, you probably can't get some of those grinds because there's just not enough material on the nib. Olive octopus. I think the family of grinds is becoming my favorite. Yeah. Challenging to talk about because every nib pro has their own name variation. Yeah. So I find that too. And, you know, I want to respect what they call it. And obviously a variation means they put their personal touch on them, right? So nib specialists are specialists because they have perfected their art of grinding a nib. And I obviously want to, like, we want to support their art, their process in getting a nib to write a specific way. And so, you know, knowing what their grind is, like what they call it, but also what makes it stand out and make it unique in terms of how you can use it and how you can get the most out of it is important, I think. That's a great engraving. Gamma Gamma, I agree. Your first was a Chicago hot dog last year? I love that. So do you put ketchup on your... No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to start anything. Cool Colors does it post. Are you Beryl and Tyne? Are you talking about this one? Yeah, it does. And so do you want to get into whether or not you post your pens? Some people feel very strongly about whether or not they post a pen, right? So I think that is very, like, it's your preference basically. But with a pocket pen, if it is postable, I tend to post it. I don't with regular pens. I either hold the cap or I put it on my desk when I'm using it. But with pocket pens, I just find that because they're so small, like I think I was writing without it posted, but when I actually do write with it, I tend to post with it because it's just so small and I like the extra support. And I find that pen makers, And you could ask them, you know, whether or not they recommend posting the pen. But I find sometimes they think about that, and I appreciate the thought they put into it to have a little bit more balance there. So you'll find that sometimes it does make a difference a little bit. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to doodle, how I doodle a very abstract floral swatch. And when I do that, I use a lower writing angle, and that to me shows how that nib sort of reacts like when I do loops. And it's very like, this is how you would sort of sketch with a fountain pen or draw with it, right? Is you use different angles and different styles of holding the pen versus if you're writing. And usually if you're printing with it, you may use a higher writing angle, or, you know, if you do cursive, you might use a lower writing angle. But for me, for drawing, I like using sort of a variety of sketching and drawing to kind of test the pen and the nib. And I think that's why this variation of nib grind works well for me, because I can write with it comfortably, and when I draw with it, I see those lines and those colors coming through. And it's a very it's a very simple doodle. So if you're into swatching, you're currently inked, and you want to do sort of a spread of notably inked, like for example, you have new inks, new nibs that you want to test out, you can do a similar sort of sketch, either florals or whatever sort of makes you comfortable, right? Like you can sketch a different drawing, but I do like drawing and sketching with a nib just because it gives me more of an idea of what it looks like, or how it feels and how it responds to different loops. And this is the mini Sankakusen. And I think actually when CY grinds his mini Sankakusen or the Sankakusen, which is ground from a double broad nib, so it will give you an even bigger or even wider line because it's a double broad. He grinds it in a way that you can actually use the reverse, and that will give you sort of that needlepoint line. So someone like Mark would enjoy that. So yeah, so the reverse side of this nib, you could still use to write with it. And it would sort of give you that extra fine. It may not feel comfortable though. So, you know, it's totally up to you. Not everyone likes their nibs, you know, that sharp. So, but I kind of like that there's the option. Different variations. No post. Mark doesn't like to post. Quadruple broad. Yeah, you could get double stacked, triple stacked, or you could get a Sharpie. No, they're fun. Stack nibs are super fun. You got Kirk's bridge nib, olive octopus. What is that? Oh, the bridge nib, of course. You mean engraved nib, yeah. Yes, I did too. I got a double broad and I got it ground into a Sankakusen from CY. You got a katana grind, okay, yeah. And is that Kirk's take on the naginata? Teach us how to doodle. Ah, yes, the self-defense nib, yeah. My curly using his double stacked is insane. Yeah, I have, so at pen shows, and I mentioned this in my live stream on Wednesday when I went through my haul. At pen shows, you can go to nib specialist table and they'll usually sometimes have testers of like the different grinds that they've done. And CY has a couple of different stacked nibs. I think he has like a double stacked and then like a triple stacked nib. And I've tried both of them and they are so much fun. But, you know, like use case, like when are you going to use it, is one thing that you need to think about because they are not cheap. So obviously you're investing in a nib. And yeah, like what are you going to use it for? And then what pen are you going to use it with? So I feel like a lot of thought has to go into it before I get a stack nib. Okay, so let's keep moving on. That's a Franklin-Christoph. The next one is a pen that I got at the California Pen Show. So I showed it off already, but I have it now inked. This is the 16 millimeter cholla from Skogsy Pens. And it is ebonite material on the outside. And then the lovely reveal of the grip section. Ooh, right? It's like so cool. Gamma, you would love this. This is like your type of pen or color. The lava / like fire, right? It's like hot. It is burning hot. And so I mentioned this in my haul video, but I initially wasn't thinking of getting this pen because it's a chonker. Like it's big, right? And a lot of my pens, as you'll see, are slim or compact. And, you know, that's just kind of like the style of pen that I go for. And so when I saw these pens at the Skogsy table, I was kind of like, oh, they're great, but, you know, it's not for me. And so this is why I love pen shows, because you can talk to the maker and really get to know like what their thought process is behind making these types of pens, and what their recommendation is, right? So I kind of asked Zach, like, how do these compare to different types of like smaller pens? And does a big pen, like, is it, you know, for someone like me who has a smaller hand and my writing style sort of lends to slimmer pens, I guess. In that case, like, is a big pen too big? And he was like, yeah, you know what? It's not. Like, a big pen is not about just the size of it, right? It's about how it feels in your hand. And for this type of pen, it actually is really comfortable to hold because of the balance. So the way this pen is balanced makes it feel really easy to write with for like long writing sessions. Just because like I'm not going to grip this too tight. It's not so slim or small that I'm kind of like trying to hold on to the pen. The pen is holding on to me. Like it is there and it feels very comfortable to just like have in my hand. And I feel like just holding a pen like that, you can feel whether or not it would be right for you. So some people would definitely say, you know, this is way too big of a pen, and it doesn't feel comfortable just because it's so, you know, it's not heavy, but it just has more, you know, pen to it. But someone like me might hold it and say, actually, it surprisingly feels very comfortable. So yes, Gamma, it's so good, right? So good. Now, yeah, the Golden Gate bridge engraving. Yeah, sorry, Olive Octopus. I like totally was like, what's a bridge grind? Yeah, the bridge engraved. And the katana is Kirk's Naginata Togi version 2 and Tanto. Oh, cool. Okay, so I've heard of Kirk's Tanto grind, which is version 1, and then katana is version 2. Okay, so I need to try those. I need to try the katana then. The larger the pen, the less grip pressure you put on the pen. Zodiac pens, of course. Yeah, you would know. So, exactly, right? And it's kind of like, I wouldn't call this like a beginner pen, but it's kind of like one of those pens where you're like, you don't really have to think about you know, how you're holding it and stuff. It just naturally sits in my hand. So that's to say I'm just gonna keep buying these big. No, I might buy a few more big pens, but I just like the variation of different pen sizes and stuff, right? Like I appreciate that. And do you want to guess what I have this inked with? Why two versions of the... Oh, good question, Red Kite. I don't know if Olive Octopus knows, but... so before I actually swatch it, the nib that I have in this is from... If it will show the nib to you. There we go. It's from Skogsy Pens, and it's an engraved surfboard design. So Skogsy, as you can see from the pen sleeve, the design is sort of the surfboard, beachy vibe. And he has these engraved nibs with the surfboard on. I think the other one he has is a cactus, but I really like the surfboard. So I got a broad, and I got it engraved by Annabelle from Opus Cineris. Last year at the SF Pen Show, and she ground it into a Cursive Italic. So it's a broad Cursive Italic. Is the fat pencils they give kids in school to learn how to write. Yeah, or you know what? It's also like the grips that you can buy, like the rubbery grips that you can put onto a pencil or a pen to help like kids sort of grip their pens properly. So I have it inked with Pen Addict Fire on Fire, right? Like I couldn't not use this ink in this type of pen. So it's the Robert Oster Fire on Fire collaboration ink with Brad from the Pen Addict. And I'll show you. Actually, let me make sure it writes still because I've had it uncapped. Yeah, of course. That's okay. We'll wet it a little bit. Just a little bit of water. By the way, this is what you could do with empty ink bottles that you love. This is my Mont Blanc ink bottle that I like. It was only like half filled anyways when I got it. It was on clearance, but I used it up and then I was like, I'm not getting rid of this ink bottle. So I just put a little bit of water, and if your pen or your nib dries up a little bit just because you have it uncapped or for whatever reason, just a little bit of like dipping it in water and then wiping it off with, you know, like a gentle sort of, might get that ink flowing again. So priming bottle. Yeah, it is kind of like a priming bottle. Just a little bit of, just having some water helps sometimes. So I think this should be able to write now. Okay, let's see. There we go. It is all good. So this one is the Skogsy. And a broad. Just kind of do this floral sketch again. Do a little shading. It's a really, really nice, vibrant shade of orange. Yeah. So that's I guess I'll write it down here too. Fire on fire. It is definitely one of those pens that's like fire. This is fire. Oh, I didn't put it in here either. Okay, Robert Oster, PA, fire on fire. Here we go. So that's the Skogsy. Super chunky pen. And then we have, ooh, yes. I like that ink, but I'm waiting on the fire on fire on fire. Yes. So, yeah, Brad said that that's coming out soon because I think a lot of people were reminding him to kindly get more, like me, because I didn't get one from the first batch for whatever reason. So I missed out, and I kept reminding him, as did other people, you know, we need more because I need the shimmer version of this ink, of course. So the next pen I have is the Esterbrook Estie in Scarlet Red. It's classic color, classic design. I love the Esties. So I got this with a fine nib because it was a deal, and so I grabbed it. But you know, I was kind of veering away from fine nibs, and so I wasn't really using it. And this is one of those situations where I took this pen with me to the SF Pen Show last year, and I sat down with Kirk and I said, I have a fine nib, and you know, I love different variations of nib grinds. What do you think I should try? And one of his recommendations was a Waverly nib. And the Waverly nib is slightly upturned, so it's kind of like a Fude nib, but rounded, so it's like a smooth Fude nib, and just slightly. So, you know, the variation isn't like super noticeable, I think, but it looks nicer to me than a fine line because it gives a little bit more of a broader sort of stroke. So that's what I got on here. It's a fine Waverly. I don't know if it will focus on it, but you'll see it when I write with it. It writes very nicely, and I have paired it with Sailor Manyo Sakura, which is like a very pretty like pinkish orange or peach. So let's write 7. Estie. Waverly. So you can kind of see the variation there. I'll show you. Right? Like you get, it's a fine nib, right? So it does write like a fine, but it gives it a little bit more of width, just a little bit. And it is rounded, so it's very smooth to write with. And then I'll show you a drawing sample as well. Very smooth. You can do the loops, no problem, and shading as well. It covers, sort of covers that really well. It's a very pretty color too. Pro tip, if you plan on using a fude nib, let the pen maker know. We strive for tight tolerances. Oh, to help it from drying out. Okay. I see. Oh, that's good to know, Zodiac Pen. If you plan on using a fude nib, to let the pen maker know. Okay, interesting. So that's the Estie with a Waverly nib. Then we have, let's see, okay. Then we have the Leonardo. So I've had this for a couple months. It's the Leonardo Momento Zero collaboration pen with Stilo&Stile in Italy. And they released this for Black Friday 2024. And I got it with a broad nib. That's how I ordered it. And then I got it ground by Gina at the California Pen Show into a reverse architect. And so I'm really excited to start writing with this pen because I like the broad nib, but again, I kind of wanted something a little bit fun added to it. So the reverse architect was something I wanted to try. And I have it inked up. Ooh, I have it inked up with, initially I had Robert Oster Honeybee because I think that's a really great, great combination with this pen. But then a pen friend sent a sample of Birmingham Pen Co. pollen. So I don't know if you've heard of this ink, but she said it's like a great sort of match to this pen. So that's what I wanted to try. And I have it in this really cute ink vial stabilizer or holder from Fountain Pendulum, which is a small shop from Canada. So it's Canadian made. And they were at the California Pen Show. And I forgot to include this in my haul video on Wednesday, but it's very cool. So like if you're like me, you tend to just kind of put your ink samples on your desk like as you're using them. And this holder is great because the ink sample actually sits pretty deep in there, so it's not going to fall over. It's stable. And it's in this maple finish, which I love. So pollen is what we're going to try on here. Okay. Let's do, so reverse. And this is the reverse. Reverse architect. Very cool. So it writes like a fine line, I guess, on the right side, and then an architect on the reverse. And if you're not familiar with the architect grind, it's a wide horizontal line and a finer vertical line. And so it's great for like block letters or like writing headers or just like a variation. Just being aware of where you're going to get those thin and thick lines, I guess. And it writes very smoothly. Gina obviously does a great job, so I'm very, very happy with that. So using the reverse is great for, like, you could sketch with it, you could shade things in as well. as well as writing, obviously. But I love that it sort of gives those different lines too. Leonardo. How do you spell that? Okay, and this is the reverse architect. Yeah, I think this ink is real, like it's a really good match for this pen for sure. That does look really nice. Like the flakes that you can see in the barrel match really well to that ink. I'm not always, like, I don't have to match inks to pen. I like doing it just because it gets me using different colors of inks, right? Like inks that I may not typically use on the daily. So I kind of like matching inks to pens, but it's not like I have to. And sometimes I will just go off kilter and I'll do, you know, opposite colors, and it's fine because it also depends on the nib for me, right? And how I'm going to use that pen. So, but it is kind of fun when you're like, when you find that right ink color that matches your pen. There's something satisfying about, you know, the pen and ink matching. It is a beautiful ink. Do you have it, Gama Gama? Or have you used it before? That's very nice. Okay. So now we have an Esterbrook Estie. This one is called Quirky Leaf, and it's one of their more recent collections. And I love this color because it's this like olivey color, right? And it has a little bit of an orange pop to it. So it's kind of fun. And you don't. I've never used it. Okay. It is a nice color though. Put it on your list. And I got it with a broad stock nib and got it ground by Gina last year at the California Pen Show. So a year ago into a journaler. And so Gina grinds the journaler nibs for Esterbrook. So you can get an Estie with a journaler nib, but I believe it's ground on a medium nib. So I had a broad nib, and so I went to Gina and asked to have the journaler ground onto a broad. And there's something really nice about the journaler nib for, you know, writing, because it's like a rounded sort of stubby line, but it's very comfortable in, you know, doing sort of journaling and writing for a little bit longer. Red Kite, love the rainbow that is starting to appear on your paper. Yes, you're catching on, right? I love rainbow colors. I love bright and vibrant colors. And over the winter months, I tend not to use a lot of bright colors just because, you know, winter. But I find that like February and then onwards, I am drawn towards like more vibrant, fun colors. And that's why I sort of call this my notably inked, because these are out of the norm for me sometimes. And they do vary month by month or by season. And, but yeah, I like the rainbow. It's kind of a fun way of like getting to use different colors too, right? Like, you know, I don't know if you're into like oranges and pinks and stuff like that, but it's kind of nice when they're part of like a rainbow family. Ackerman number 28. Good flower stem color. Thank you. Okay, Mark, I'll take a note of that. Always looking for good floral colors, like for painting and for drawing and stuff. That's good to know. Fountain pen use. You got a journaler from Gina on your BB Lamy 2000. Whoa, yes. And do you love it? I feel like that would be really, really fun. Yeah. So this is the broad journaler. And I have it inked up with, I'll show you in a second. Yes. Sailor Ink Studio 280. That's this one. And it is one of my favorite like olive greens. And yeah, it's a great, I think it's sort of in between that green, yellow, you know, in the olive family. And it is a fave of mine for sure. Number 280. Sailor ink names are boring. And honestly, I love like the, you know, like the Manyo and the Shikiori lines and stuff. You know, they have actual names. But the Ink Studio lineup, honestly, it took me like months to remember that 280. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like numbers don't equate to colors for me. So remembering that I really liked this color was like, it was hard. It was hard. Like continually telling myself 280 is olive green. Okay. So this is a great stem color too, Mark. And the journaler nib is also great for sketching and doodling and drawing with too, because it is very smooth. It's very smooth to write with and to draw with. .280 is fire. I think that's one that goes widely weird on bank paper too. Oh, interesting, Olive. Have you, what do you mean by weird? Like, is it the color? Because you sort of see a little bit of like yellow, like brownish yellow kind of coming through, like a little bit of a brown. So it is one of those interesting inks for sure. Like it's not a just flat color, if that makes sense. Let's sketch the name. Oh, how are you sketching numbers? Oh yes, thanks for explaining the architect, Olive Octopus. Mark, Infinity Car Company. What is, yeah, QX, right? Like, give me a name like Corolla. That's why my name is Corolla. Because it makes sense as a car. Yeah. Good times. I'm gonna have some of my coffee. So this one is Mark. This one is Franklin-Christoph 46 is the model number. Talking about numbers. Remembering Franklin-Christoph's model numbers is a whole other thing too, because I have the 46, I have the 03, and I have the Pocket 20. So P20 and then 03 and 46, but it's all good. I love this pen. It's clipless, and it has this sort of like cracked ice finish to it. And just like a very light teal color, right? Very nice, very, it looks great. And I love the demo, you know, like a demonstrator being able to see ink and like the nib and stuff. I love that. I think it's like very, almost like understated, but just gorgeous. What I've done for the ink studio is pick an object like a flower or snowflake that seems to go with the color and then do groupings of that number. Oh, cool, Olive Octopus. That's a very cool concept. And then a conspicuous blank area. Yeah, 0. Very cool. Yeah, awesome. I love that. So the nib that I have in here is a broad sag. Yeah, it's a broad sag. So I have a double broad sag in my baby saguaro, the first pen that I swatched. And then I have a broad sag in this pen. And so, yeah, I love, you know, the stubby, italic, you know, smoother sort of writers. And this is great for journaling, but also, again, like it's great for drawing and doodling as well. And I have it inked up with, of course, I have it inked up with a teal color, right? And this is Bungabox Tears of Alice. Look at that bottle, too. How cool. What a cool bottle. Tears of Alice. And it is like a really, really nice teal. So... very smooth. That color is really, really nice. I think it goes well with this pen as well. Fun to shade with too. Wow, look at that color. And the pen. So So that's the Franklin-Christoph 46. And then I have, oh, this one I'll go through quickly because it's just one of those pens, again, like the matte black VP. I just have it inked all the time, like, right? Because VPs are great for like having on the go and just being able to use it easily. You know, you click and you're good to go. So this one I have in a medium nib. And I like having, like, I don't feel the need to have 2 Pilot vanishing points with a broad nib inked up at the same time. And so but I do kind of like having a variation of nibs, even if it's the same pen. So this one is a medium, whereas the matte black was a broad. And I have it inked up with my probably all-time favorite ink that I use in pens that either they're new pens, so I kind of want to get a feel for them, and I don't want to play around with inks that might be finicky. So this is like my stable, you know, I can always count on this ink. Tsukiyo Pilot Iroshizuku. It's also one of my favorite shades. I love blues and greens and teals, and I love this sort of like navy blue. So that's what I have in here. Tsukiyo in my Pilot VP. So I'm just gonna write it in my inventory list. And always, like, I've never had an issue with the Tsukio ink. Like, it is always ready to go. Yeah. So that's the medium nib on a vanishing point, and that was the broad. So yeah, I mean, you can tell the difference between a medium and a broad, and it's kind of just, you know, it's nice to have different nib sizes in pens that you like, and pens that are ones that you use often, maybe. Okay, so we are now down to the pens on the tray. Yay! And the next one I'm going to write with. The sunshine here and this pretty color palette is offsetting the excessive amount of winter we've had here this week. Yes, you've had a lot of snow coming through, haven't you? And like Toronto, East Coast in general, has been having a lot of snow coming through. And it's been on this side, on the west coast of Canada, it's been really cold. Only in the last few days has it warmed up. Like this week it's actually warmer, like typical for British Columbia. But even then we had freezing temperatures, and it was hard to get through. And I was sort of turning towards these bleak colors and then decided, like, early in February, I was like, no, we're going to go into, like, we're getting into Valentine's Day, right? Like, we're getting into happy and spring months. So it's time to go away winter. I have the Parker Maxima. This is a vintage pen that I picked up at the California Pen Show. And this is, the nib in it is a left oblique. And so I was very intrigued by it because I've never used a left oblique. I'm probably, like, I don't need to use it because my writing style doesn't, you know, it's not so much to one side that I would probably need to get this ground for me. But I think left oblique is just kind of like a fun variation on like a stub, you know, italic, those types of nib grinds. So it's a gold nib, and I am just very intrigued. And so you could sort of see that slant in the grind there. And so what I actually inked this up, and this is where we get into not matching ink colors with pens, because initially I thought of maybe like a brown or, you know, something in this sort of maroon family, red to maroon. And then I changed my mind because it is a vintage pen. So for me personally, I don't have a lot of vintage pens, but my rule, or like, you know, what I sort of like about vintage pens is like the idea that they're vintage. And to me, vintage pens are classic, right? They're timeless. And so I went with an ink that I probably wouldn't really use in one of my more modern pens because it is a classic. Just Pilot Blue. So, of all the blue inks that I have, I probably wouldn't use Pilot Blue in like one of my, you know, regular pens, just because I have so many different choices. But I will make the exception for a vintage pen because to me, it, you know, having like a classic blue in this type of pen is like perfect for me. So I guess where I sort of veer away from matching an ink to a pen, one of those cases would be a vintage pen. But that being said, I personally think the blue and maroon or brown, you know, this sort of dark reddish color, I think blue goes really well with this color. So maybe it's complementary. Is it pre-Parker selling to? So this is made in England. It's from the 50s or 60s. So that Parker. Zodiac, you had snow Wednesday and Thursday in Charlotte. Ooh. Yeah, I know. Snow is tough. It's tough, especially when like you have snow and then there's more snow piled on top of it. Like, where does that go, right? Yeah, it is very old, Mark. But it is in great condition, like almost pristine condition. And I talked about this in my live stream on Wednesday when I went through my haul, but I got this from Mad Mercantile. So Mike at Mad Mercantile. Magical Quill, thank you. Thanks for the follow. Welcome. And anyone else who followed me like in the last couple of hours, I see you and I appreciate you. Thank you so much. So Mike from Mad Mercantile showed me this pen, and we kind of went through different pens, but he mentioned that for, you know, from being from the 50s or 60s, and it probably would have been used a lot, like this type of pen, but it's in such great condition. Like, there are no scratches. It's an aerodynamic, sort of like a sack filler. Like, you have to depress it to get the ink to fill the sack. And it was transparent, like you could see through it. And so Mike mentioned that for a pen to be like that, in that kind of condition, it was probably in the back of the shop or something like that, and it kind of sat there and no one really used it. And so obviously I was like, it's great. Like, it's in great condition. It's from it's a vintage pen, and I like it. And it's a fun nib. So you got some 100-year-old pens restored recently? Oh, amazing. That is awesome. Wow, 100-year-old pens. Whoa. Sometime in the 90s they sold, and the Parker Aero clips started showing up on lots of other pens. Oh, I see. Okay, I see what you mean now. The clip. Yeah. That Aero style. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so this, let's draw with it. And I've only, since inking it up yesterday, I've only played around with it a little bit. So I think I sort of need to play around a little bit more just to get the feel for it. But, you know, as you sort of angle this nib, you'll get a feel for like what the angle should be, like, to get an optimal line. But I will say that it writes very smoothly. Like, this nib is just, it's like glides. And so I guess it does depend on how you angle it. And like I mentioned, I don't have like a grip that sort of would probably lend to this type of grind, but I am very intrigued by it, and I can't wait to sort of play around with it. It gets that cool archetype line. Pilot blue. Very cool. Yeah. I like it. I like it very much. It writes very nicely. Mysterious blue, pilot blue, yes. I think you may not have been here when I mentioned that I tend to match my inks with pens most of the time, but vintage pens are one of those occasions where I don't match my inks, just because for me it's more about the vintage vibe of the pen. So I went with blue because I actually think blue complements maroon, but I also went with pilot blue because it's just one of those inks that performs well. It's from Pilot, so, you know, I know it's going to do really well regardless of the pen that I use it in. And so for me, it's more about the pen than the ink. And Pilot Blue, I don't think I'm going to change out the ink in this pen. That's another reason, is I don't like to play around with vintage pens the way that I like to play with modern pens, changing out inks and, you know, playing around with the filling systems and stuff. And so I'd rather use a classic color in this type of pen that I could just refill when it's done. Yeah. So that's the Parker Maxima. And then we have a Franklin-Christoph 03. And ooh, this is a fun nib and a great ink. Gamma Gamma, if you're still here. So on this pen, I have a beak point. And so I did not drop this nib, which is exactly what it looks like to me when I got it ground by Matthew Chen at Pactagon. And I got it done at, I think it was my first SF pen show a couple years ago. And I got it because I tried it out at the Heinz Pens table. And I thought, oh, wow, what a cool nib. And so so Matt Chen got it, or ground it for me. And it is basically, on the right side, it's an extra fine. So when you're writing normally. And then on the reverse side, it's a very wide sort of fude style nib. And so let me just double check that it writes, but yeah. So I have it inked with Amarillo Stationery Blue Suntan. So this is one of Eric's inks that Gamma Gamma he released in January. And this one is the blue ink. Yes, you're here. So I have to say, you know, there's 4 different ink colors, and the blue and the teal green are probably my favorite from that line. So I had to put the blue in here, and you'll see when I use the wider point, the wider line, you'll see more of the ink properties. So this is the Franklin-Christoph. If you've ever tried a beak point, or the sort of style of nib, it's kind of interesting to write with it on the right side because it is like it's bent down. So you're kind of looking down onto, you don't really see the nib point, which is kind of interesting. It's something to get used to. This is the beak point. So Amarillo Stationery Blue Suntan. And I'll show you, suntan. Okay, I'll show you on here so you can see the line variations. Let's move this out of the way. So you get that extra fine line. And I like the contrast of the extra fine line with the wider line. So I'm going to show you. And then you can use this fine line or this wider line for coloring in or for sketching, because it is like, it takes up a lot of space. So I'll show you how to write, like what it looks like when you write with it. Oh, So it's really fun because you can, you can do really fun writing with it. You could do calligraphy or, a type of like brush lettering. Or yeah, you could do shading with it. Kind of get that line there. It depends on, definitely play around with the angle of it, because, you sort of have to angle it downward, but enough to have that bottom of the nib touch the paper properly, right? So that would be your widest line, obviously, is if the full nib surface touches your paper. And that will give you this line. So do you have to hold it at a lower angle? So if you write, like this, or if you sort of write like this, you'll see that you won't get it fully to touch the paper. So you kind of have to angle it in a way that it actually does touch the paper. And it's not really like a super low line, I don't think. Like it's kind of at a, what would you say, like a 40, 45 degree angle kind of. Like it seems, like for me also, because I got it ground, right? So you get a custom grind when you want the beak point. And so Matt or like any nib specialist will work with you in terms of your writing angle and what feels comfortable to you, right? So Matt did have me sort of write with it as he was grinding the beak point. So I guess for me, this makes sense, this writing angle, to get that wider point. And then for you, as you're testing out the nib, maybe you want a higher angle or a lower angle. But at some point, it does have to be upturned in order to be this beak point. Weird, like a reverse fude. Yeah, that's kind of what it is, right? Like a reverse fude a little bit. But it's great because, that's why it's a beak point, is because it's pointing down and you get that, whatever your stock nib that you choose. I went with extra fine because I just kind of like picked it. I was like, oh, extra fine is fine, because of the contrast between the two, right? So you could use this for like a statement, a header, something to bring attention to whatever you're doing, whatever you're writing or drawing. And then you get that finer line to write, you could write underneath, or details, or whatever sort of line or nib you use on the daily could be that starting nib size. So I have it inked again with Amarillo stationery. Blue. And then when you're playing with, like even with the fude, I guess, right? When you're playing with the angles that you're using the pen, you could either get like the maximum line variation, or if you're angling a little bit higher so that you don't have the full width of the nib touching the paper, you get a little bit of a thinner line too. So it's really fun to play with, I think. Spend time with the nib and use it in the way that makes sense for you. I need a good green that isn't leaning blue. I like a little yellow lean, but not too bright. Oh, interesting. Olive Octopus, are you still here? A good green that isn't leaning blue, yeah. A little bit of yellow too. I like Teranishi Guitar Gentle Green. That's a nice green too. It's not too, or maybe it does lean a little bit blue actually, now that I think about it. Yeah. And the next, okay, this one's a fun one. This is a new pen that I got at the California Pen Show too. Not that I need more sailors, because I have sailors. This one's a sailor. but because they did a super sale and it is a gorgeous pen. So I ended up getting it also because I got it with a music nib. And I don't have a music nib, nor have I tried a music nib, but I've always been curious about it. And so I thought, you know what, this is my chance to get a standard Sailor Pro Gear, which I don't have in standard. And so get the size of the pen, get a colorway that is beautiful, and also get a music nib, which I'm curious about. And I can't wait to use it and try it out a few times. You'll hold up on refilling. Okay, Olive Octopus, you'll help out. There you go. So I'll show you what I have this pen inked up with. Fujiyama Blue from Bungabox, because it is a very beautiful sort of blue, light teal glass slipper bottle. Yes, I know. Look how gorgeous this bottle is. And I was showing earlier that I have Tears of Alice. These are my only two ink bottles from Bungabox, but I love the shape of this bottle. I think it's super cool. And I do love the inks as well. So win-win. So this is, and I will admit the music nib is meant to, like, you know, it's called music nib because it's like the composition sort of pen or nib. But I don't know if a lot of people use it for like composing music. And it's kind of like a stub variation, I guess. But I've watched videos and I have heard that you have to write with it at a higher angle, maybe. And maybe if someone has used it, you can let me know if that's accurate. But when I was playing around with it, I was using it at a lower angle, and I did find that the downstrokes weren't catching. And so like it wouldn't write, and then it would start writing as I did those upstrokes or continue to write. And so it could be because of the angle that I was holding it at, which is, you know, I don't write at a really high angle. So maybe that could be why. But I am looking forward to playing around with it. And I just love that it puts down a lot of ink. Look at that line. Wow. Like, talk about really broad nibs, or broad stubs too. Sailor Pro Gear with music. Like, this will put down a lot of ink. And maybe I am angling it too high, or like getting too much of that nib on the paper, that it doesn't need to be this thick, but I like it. I think it's very interesting. Let's continue on a different page. It's also very fun to draw with. At the higher angles, I do find that it doesn't feel scratchy like maybe a typical Sailor nib might. And that could also be because it's a broader nib, and so it's a little bit more, it's a little smoother, maybe. Music nib. Very cool. So that's inked with Fujiyama blue. Crazy shading. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Very cool. Olive Octopus Fujiyama blue is cool. I snoozed and they sold it in SF. Oh, okay, yes. That's where I got it. I got it in SF. In that room. Was it the same room where the glass tip pens were? It was in one of those smaller rooms. And so initially I had known the Bungabox was there and I was like, oh, I have to check them out because obviously like I want a couple of inks, right? And by the time I got back to that small room, they had sold out of a lot of inks. And so I kind of was like, Fujiyama blue was one of those inks that Brad had included in his the sample ink vial sample ink trays. I think at the SF show before. And so like a couple years ago. And I had tried it there as a sample and it was in my notebook as like, if I ever got a Bungabox, Fujiyama blue was probably going to be one of those inks that I would pick up. And so that's why, when I went back, I was like, ooh, I really want this one. And then I looked at the teals and greens and Tears of Alice is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. So those are the two I got from their table. But they had sold out even when I went, like a lot of different shades. Yeah. Yep, that's the thing. You go back and it's like, what's left, But I mean, if you know what you want, then you can get it. If you don't, then it's one of those things where you kind of have to browse and make a decision. Then there was so much to take in at this show. That's the typical situation, right? Especially when you see their offering and there's so many to choose from, and it's a little bit overwhelming in that way where it's like, I want all of them, but I can't. So how do you sort of narrow down to what you want? At least you have all your swatches with you and you can kind of like figure out like what variation you're into or what else you want to add to your collection. But a lot of times I'm kind of like what inks do I have and what colors do I need to add to my collection? Yeah. So that is the Sailor Pro Gear. You made decisions more quickly this time. Yeah, you were at Nagasawa. I know. Like their table sold out on a lot of things. So I think, and they were in the corner too, right? So like I noticed there were a lot of people around the table and when I went, there wasn't a lot of choice of anything. And so I kind of went, oh, well, next time. But you kind of have to make those decisions on the fly or plan ahead to which tables you want to go to. So this is the Pro Gear Slim, and it is a Sailor and Cult Pens collab or exclusive. So I got this from Cult Pens, and I think they had a deal at the time, which is why I really wanted it. But also because the color is like this mauve purple, and I find it's like a really nice shade. So, yeah. Is that an ink that I could still buy online? Oh, good question. Do you mean the Fujiyama blue or you mean from the show? The show ink. So the nib that I got is a broad. I have a medium fine Sailor nib, I have a medium Sailor nib, and now I have a broad, and now I have music. And so yeah, Sailor's one of those pens where like you could just keep collecting and spend a lot of money, having a bunch of Sailor pens. But I think for me, I'm happy having just like one of the different types of nibs that they have, because I personally don't need more than one of the same nib from Sailor. The blue in my pen. Yeah, the Fujiyama blue. I think so. Zodiac pens, but I don't know for sure. Or if they're at a show, I would assume like this is one of their popular shades, I think. So I have this inked up with like a plum prune color. So I'll tell you in a second. This is Sailor Pro Gear Slim with a broad nib. So this is inked up with an ink that a pen friend brought back from Paris or sent it to me. When she went to Paris, she visited L'Écritoire. I know I'm butchering it, but my French is not that great. But they are a small stationery shop, and they have a line of inks that they make. So this one is called Prune, and it's like this really lovely shade of like plum purple. And I think it goes really well with this pen too. Oh, let me just move it under here, and then I can write and draw. I don't know if you use sailors or if you like sailor nibs, but I kind of do like the scratchiness, like not scratchiness, a little bit of feedback, right? Like some people will say it feels scratchy, but it is that sort of the feedback that you get from that nib that is kind of like, it is a sailor nib. So I like it. Especially on a broad nib, to me is a little bit smoother than like a medium fine. So I really enjoy the broad sailor nibs. Yeah, I know, Eric, I agree. The labels are so cool, like, or in the bottle, right? It's very cute. It's very like French. It's very Parisian, I think. Yeah, I hope you find it, Zodiac Pens. I don't think it's like, I think you could. It looks like Jet Pens has Fujiyama. It's pricey though, yeah. Do they have the price on here? I don't remember what it was. Off the top of my head, I don't remember the price of it, but I do remember that it was like reasonable, right? Like, because I had looked at getting it online maybe, but shipping it to Canada, I was like, And then I saw that they were going to be there at the SF Pen Show, and so I kind of planned to go and just, get a few inks, or at least a couple of inks. And Fujiyama Blue had stood out in my mind because I had tried a sample of it and loved it. So like I said, I think it is a popular shade just in general for them. So if they are going to be at a pen show or an event, I feel like it's one of those inks that they would bring or provide because, yeah, I think a lot of people they like that shade and that ink. So I think you may be able to find it. So that is the Sailor Pro Gear Slim. Very nice color, right? Like, those two go pretty well together. Okay, so this is my last pen that I'm going to inventory. It's going to be my 16th currently inked pen this month. My personal sort of, like you could be one of those people who inks up like 3 pens, and you're good. Like you have your blue, black, brown, or whatever, or, a black and a couple of like fun ones. Or you could be one of those people that inks up like 40 pens. And that's fine too, because you can try different inks, you can try different nibs, you can try shimmers, you know, sheeners, all kinds of, there's so much variety and choice that if you're in this hobby as an enthusiast and you just love playing with pens and inks, you could have as many as you want inked up. As long as you remember that they're inked up and you remember to use them every once in a while so the ink doesn't dry up in the pen. And and you clean them out and sort of maintain them. If you forget, then maybe it's good to have these inventories, because then you can remember that you have your pens inked up. But for me personally, my sweet spot of currently inked is up to about 15. And that includes pens that I use on the daily. So like, for example, the ones that have like, you know, the kuro, the carbon black, the grays. So these ones sort of the top ones. And then also like, you know, the Pilot VPs with the Tsukio. They're ones that I don't really change up. They'll always kind of be inked. I don't necessarily need to use it constantly, but these are pens that I do, you know, reach for specific reasons. And then the ones that are sort of in between are the ones that I ink up for fun. I want to play with the nibs, or I just want to bring some brightness into my writing. And those are the ones that vary month to month. And I find that usually I have maybe 8 to 10 pens that are inked up with fun colors, or they're inked up because I want to play with them. And that's kind of my sweet spot. But, you know, you do you, and you ink up as many as you want. Jet pens in the US. Yeah. I don't know who else carries Bungabox inks. But jet pens, I would say, is probably up there. So this pen is a Franklin-Christoph Pocket 20. So it is similar to the other Pocket 20 that we had inked up, this one. But this Pocket 20 has a clip and this one does not. And the other difference, or not difference, but what you could do is you could eyedropper these Pocket 20s, or you could use a short cartridge. Like, it won't take a full, you know, like an international converter, because they are pocket pens, and so your converter will be too long for this. But you could eyedropper it. If you put a little silicone grease in the threads, like obviously prep your pen if you're going to eyedropper it. But I did eyedropper this one, so I added ink in this one. And then I used a regular cartridge in this pen. So that's an option. And so at the California Pen Show, Monteverde was, they had an Instagram post that had said, like, come by our table and mention this post and you can pick out a free ink, which is like really nice of them, right? And so I didn't check any bags flying into Canada, so I didn't really want to carry around bottles of ink. So I ended up choosing ink cartridges. And this one is Private Reserve Plum. And so I've never tried Private Reserve before. I have seen them around. But I do like the plum or purple color. So I decided to get that. So that was nice. And the nib is a perspective grind from Gina. But this is a nib that Gina had available for purchase at the show as a standalone nib. And sometimes nib specialists may have that, where they have pre-ground some nibs and you can purchase them separately from like having it ground onto a nib that you have. And I didn't have time to get a bunch of grinds from Gina, although I did want to try the perspective because, again, it's like Gina's version of a naginata, and, you know, with Gina's magic in it. So it is a BB, so double broad nib. And yeah. So again, with the, depending on what angle you write at, you'll get the different line variation. So this is Franklin-Christoph Pocket 20 with a perspective nib and private reserve plum. So I'll show you how it draws and writes at different angles, of course. So at a lower angle, you should be able to get a wider line variation. Which is great for shading and drawing or sketching and filling in, you know, things with color. And then if you're writing at a higher angle, you get a little bit of a thinner line, which is great for just regular writing. Or if you do cursive or hand lettering, you can of course play around with that. It's a nice plum color. So that is pretty close to the prune, but it's more magenta-y. So yeah, that perspective grind is very interesting, and also like it's useful, I think, for journaling and writing, and then also adding a little bit of interest whether you're drawing or doodling and stuff like that. So just playing around with, you know, how you sort of write and draw. So that's kind of it. And then we're talking about rainbow colors and just, you know, having a little bit of color in currently inked lineup is like, it's really fun, right? It's very happy, and especially when we're going through winter and winter months, it's kind of something fun to look at. And for me, I like having the variations of nibs just because it just gives more interest in what you're using them for. And for, you know, I kind of tend to pull out these pens because today I feel like writing with a Waverly nib, and then tomorrow I feel like, you know, playing around with, you know, a Sankakusen or something like that. Or like the signature nib is kind of cool when you're like, you're writing with a gray ink. So already it's just, you know, that's kind of not boring, but classic. And having a nib that gives you a little bit of fun is, for me, it keeps me interested in fountain pens, and it keeps me interested in collecting and trying new variations. And like recently I've discovered reverse grinds, and soon I'll, you know, try stacked nibs or, you know, something like that. And it's just something you move forward and add to, I think, in this hobby. And it keeps me interested. So I'm going to need this plum. Yeah. Oh, tsutsuji. Yeah. That's kind of what it is, right? It's like a magenta, like bright magenta kind of color. It is nice. It's very nice. And it's still like kind of different from, like it's still, like it's not as pink as maybe some of these ones or this one. And it's not as purple. So if you are like a magenta person, this is kind of a great shade. And I like just, I like the cartridges you can, you know, put into your pen, especially if you're using like a pocket pen or pen that you're going to carry around with you. Cartridges are great, and having them available in different colors, I think, is really useful. So yeah. So I think that was kind of it in terms of of swatching my currently inked. So we kind of did this inventory, right, of the 16 pens that I have inked up currently and use, and including some of the 3 new pens that I got at the California Pen Show. And then this is my notably inked, where we kind of have a little bit more fun. And I encourage you to, if you sort of do keep an inventory of your currently inked pens, and you do it on a monthly basis or whatever sort of the timing that you do it in, I do encourage you to, try to play around a little bit with it. Maybe not all those pens, especially if you have a lot of currently inked pens. Maybe pick your notably inked, fun inks, fun colors, or fun nibs that you want to explore a little bit, right? And this is what this is. It's a little bit more exploration of color, variation of lines, and you do these sort of floral doodles if you want. They're just lines. Or you can pick something that you feel comfortable with, shading, drawing, doodling, whatever. Or you could just, do loops and stuff. And I find just doing those sort of loops and circles and shading gives me a little bit more of those ink properties. And it's just kind of a fun way of documenting the inks that you're enjoying at the moment. You love the Notably Inked Needle Girl. Yeah, I do too. Maybe we should just we have currently inked and then we have notably inked. How often do you do the currently inked inventory? I tend to do it on a monthly basis. And I do, I just do inventory basically, right? So these are currently inked. Sometimes I include pens that I have cartridges in. Sometimes I don't, just because it hurts my brain to take out all of my fountain pens that are the EDC ones where I have a Kaweco in my Plotter Mini. It just stays in there and it has a black cartridge, and it's I could of course replace it with a fine liner or a ballpoint or something, but I use up my fountain pens that way. I don't necessarily swatch it every month because I know I use it regularly. So it is being used. I just don't need to put it into my currently inked. But that's sometimes. A lot of times I will inventory all of my pens just to stay on top of what's inked. And then I also do a quick sort of monthly review of where I stand in terms of how many ink bottles, the fountain pens I have and stuff like that. For me, it's kind of a monthly thing. And then the notably inked. So when I actually create these spreads, I usually do it on a monthly basis as well. And I film it and I put it on YouTube or I share it on Instagram. And so it looks nicer, and it's, people love those bright, fun ink colors, and they don't necessarily want to see all of my black inked pens, right? So that's where the currently inked and notably inked differ, is that I don't really include the inks and pens that I always have inked up and people aren't necessarily interested in. So that's kind of on a monthly basis, or if mid-month I change up my pens, which you're allowed to do. You can do whatever you want to do. You can ink them up as often as you want to. And usually if I ink up a batch of pens, then I will swatch them. I'll document them in my hobbies journal just to say, if I ink them up on this day. And then I do a notably inked spread. And that's what I tend to share on socials. So community tea time. Hi, I remember you from the Pen Addict streams. You inspired me to try painting with fountain pen inks last night. Oh, yay. I'm so glad. And did you have fun? Yeah, I'm so glad you got inspired to paint with fountain pen inks. My first live stream was painting with fountain pen inks. Gamma Gamma was there. It was really fun. And I want to do that. I want to try and do that on a weekly basis So maybe like every Wednesday or every Friday or something like that. This week was, I was doing the recap of the California Pen Show. So I had to do that, but I think I want to try and do like a weekly sort of paint with me or watch me paint and then do it later at your own time. But it's a nice way of using up fountain pen inks, right? And it's a nice way of getting some creative time in and just relax a little bit. And I like when people either watch the videos and do it later, and I like it even more when they have fun and they're like, Gama did it, and it can seem intimidating to like paint or even, doodling these flowers. Like I will do a live stream where I'm doodling or drawing these flowers using a glass dip pen or like different types of stationery tools. And Zodiac pens can attend and learn how to use a glass dip pen or other, stationery tools that are not necessarily fountain pens, which is also a fun way of using up fountain pen ink and also using accessories that us pen people love. So yeah, I'm glad you had a fun time. Oh, you did? Yeah, good. You had a Twisby bottle of emerald green ink. Oh, nice. Yeah, you did some loose shamrocks for cards. That's so fun. Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you like that idea of a stream. We will definitely do something like that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining and for keeping me company while I did this, because now this is like my social content, right? But you saw the behind the scenes and you were part of me like testing out these nibs and basically exploring them and reacting to how they each sort of had their like uniqueness to them, right? Whether or not I got them ground and I was kind of playing around with how they felt, or if it was just like swatching the inks, like seeing what those inks look like, especially when you sort of have like when you're sketching with them or you're shading with them and you get a little bit more of those ink properties coming through. I will also I want to thank you for the follow. Plain water. I will also say I don't recently I haven't really been inking up shimmer inks, even though I have a lot of them. I have a lot of Ferris wheel press shimmer inks and others, Wearingool, and I love those shimmer inks for painting. So next time we paint, I will probably show off some of those shimmer inks. I don't know if I don't know when the last time I inked up a fountain pen with shimmer ink was. Again, because, you want to make sure the nib and pen will be able to handle shimmers. But I do love painting with them. So that's one thing, like in terms of variation, I do have variation in color. But I would, love to show off a little bit more of the fountain pen inks that I have that have other properties to them. So that would be fun to explore. Oh, Plain Water, welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're here. And yeah, I'm Corolla. I'm a stationery enthusiast. I love planners, journals, fountain pens, fountain pen inks. I love painting and drawing. I do a lot of painting with fountain pen inks, but also watercolor paints. And I tend to do a lot of sort of abstract floral style art. And so this is like intuitive line drawing. I don't have a set sort of, I don't necessarily do it in a specific way. I just kind of go with the flow, and I love sharing that process and encouraging others to do it. So join me on future streams and we'll do sort of these floral drawings and paintings and explore inks and paints together. So yay, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for joining me on the stream. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. And yeah, we'll do more of these where we're kind of painting or playing with stationery tools, fountain pens, fountain pen inks. And Wednesdays and Fridays are kind of my current schedule that works for me. And so if you can join, that would be lovely. I do post on Instagram stories just to let you know what we're going to be doing in the stream, and just a reminder to join. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, definitely take a look there. I'm from Corolla on socials, and in my profile I also have all my other links that you can connect with me. So thank you. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed. Thanks so much for joining. Okay, take care, have a good weekend, have a good rest of your day, and remember, go play with your stationery.